Cool. How is everyone doing? How was lunch? Awesome. Can I move you guys around a bit? Can I get everyone over here, over here? Just move over a bit, please. We have a lot of empty chairs here. Just pack in a little bit. That includes you, sir. Thank you. Please just pack in a little bit. Awesome. Thank you. So I've been thinking about this talk for a long time. One of the things that occurred to me is when I came to doing this event is that I've never worked for a blockchain company ever. Not once. I know very little about the crypto space. I've read a couple of books, and I don't really know much about it. So one of the things that I decided to do was to start speaking to people that run these kinds of communities. I began reaching out to anyone I could find that would run a blockchain online community in any kind of form, and just trying to ask them, what does community mean to you? What's the difference between any other kind of community? And what I found is that a community means something different to every one of us. Everyone has a slightly different definition of what a community is. But I also realized that it doesn't matter what kind of community you're running. There's one thing that unites almost every kind of community. It doesn't matter what kind of online community that you're trying to build an audience for. It doesn't matter if you're a blockchain startup that's just trying to do some crowdsourcing work. It doesn't matter if you're an investor and trying to get your audience to share more advice or more expertise. It doesn't matter if you're a blockchain association building a community for your members or a developer trying to get more contributors. There's one thing that's going to unite every single one of these communities. And it doesn't matter what technology you're going to use. It doesn't matter if you use Telegram or if you use Slack or Steemit or any of the other amazing technology you have out there, Discord, Meetup, Line, WeChat. There's still going to be one thing, just one single thing that unites all of your communities. And that is a powerful sense of community. The strongest online communities, the ones that don't just survive, but the communities that thrive are the ones that have a really powerful sense of community. They're the ones where you feel a part of something together. And if we can replicate that feeling with the communities that we're working with, we can achieve much more than what we do today. Most of the time, and in a lot of the talks we've had so far, we've talked a lot about the technology we use. We talk a lot about the technology that underpins these communities. We've talked about the contributions we want members to make and how we influence them. We talked about the value of those contributions. But I think the iceberg metaphor works really well here. All these things, all these kinds of things that we've talked about so far, I think sit at the top of the iceberg. They're just the visible things that you can see right now. But it's the sense of community that drives all of these contributions. If people feel a stronger sense of community, then they're more likely to want to make more contributions to that group. They're more likely to try and create more for that group. They're more likely to want to share more information with that group. They're more likely to do all of the amazing things that we want our members to do. So the challenge isn't just to try and get more contributions at this level. Isn't just to try and get your members to share more information, but the real challenge, the challenge for every single one of us that's building any kind of online community today, every one of us, is to build a much stronger sense of community. Because if we want a lot more contributions at the top here, then we need a much more stronger and more powerful sense of community below. Because when you look at the data, when you look at the studies, what we find over and over and over again is that the communities with the strongest sense of community, the ones where people really feel a part of something together, they're the ones that have the most contributions. They're the ones that have all the positive impacts that we want to see from a community. And we've seen this with a lot of the clients we've worked with. Over the last around 10 years or so, we've worked with so many amazing organizations, Apple, Facebook, Oracle, SAP, some of the largest organizations in the world. And what we've seen over and over and over again is that if we build a stronger sense of community, if we really make people feel a part of something together, then the level of contributions goes way up. In almost every single metric that we want to see, if we make people feel a stronger sense of community, we can make the metrics go up in almost anything that we want to see, anything. So the challenge is, how do we build this powerful sense of community? And when I was joining a lot of the communities that are out there today in the blockchain space, one of the things that became really apparent is that there's a problem, which is most communities that I've seen, most of the communities that I've joined, seemed entirely designed for people to lurk. They seemed designed for people just to visit and read information but never participate. If you're running any kind of blockchain group today, if you're running any kind of online community today, what you almost certainly see is that most of your members don't participate. Most communities out there are designed accidentally just for people to lurk. And we looked this up. One of the things that we spent a lot of time researching is how many people actually join a community and how many participate. And this is what we found. Looking at so many different kinds of communities that are out there today, most members who make a post, well not most, let's say around 30 to around 50% here. People that make their first post in a community, they never participate again. What happens? Why does all their energy, all their enthusiasm to join that community, why does all the energy they have when they ask that first contribution, where does that go? Why do they never participate again? And of them, of all those amazing people that make their first contribution, most of them will be gone within 30 days. You've got around 60 to around 70% of your members there who they'll make a contribution and then they're gone. They'll never participate again. And of them, it's around 80 to 95% here of online communities where most members simply won't be the same. 80 to 90% of members in most communities will never be a member for more than 90 days. These are shocking statistics. And what this means is that most of the communities out there today, almost every single one that we've seen, are only harnessing a really tiny percentage of the potential of that group. They're only harnessing a tiny percentage of that group. And so the challenge is, how do we build that sense of community that gets people to stick around? We've tested so many different approaches, so many different ideas in how we do this. And what we've found is that there's one approach that seems to work best, and that's this approach here. There's a lot of words here, so let me quickly explain it. First, if people aren't joining and participating in your community today, it's probably because they don't see what the value of that community is. They don't know that the community exists, or they're a member of competitor groups. And even if you get past that, even if you find a way to make sure members know that you exist, you still got the issue of how do you get people to participate? How do you get people to not just join that community, but how do you get them to actually participate? And this is where we look at that immediate gratification that they get right now. And that gratification comes in a couple of forms. First, it's the gratification of solving a problem they have today. If you design a community and you make it really clear there's a problem they can solve right now, people will participate at least once. Or if you make it clear that there's a set of skills or knowledge or something they can get right now, something today, something that they're thinking about today, they participate. Or if you make it clear it's a community that's going to increase their social status in some way, they're going to participate much more. But the challenge again is, how do we get people to stick around for the long term? And this is where we start to think about how we build a stronger sense of community. And this isn't just a high-level idea. This isn't just something that exists way up here and there's no practical purpose behind that. There's a lot of data that exists at the moment, a lot of academic articles that exist that have studied the sense of community extensively. And when you start to look at this, what becomes clear is that there's 4 parts to this. The first is membership. Membership is the idea you can identify who is or isn't a member of that community. So here's a question for you, everyone here right now. How do you know the other people in this room are part of this community today? Anyone, just shout out. Yeah, please. Badge, yeah. Anything else? Sorry? Yes, excellent, I love that. Anyone else? Business cards, yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear that. The purpose? Yes. What did you say? Self-introduction? Yeah. So the easiest way to know the person next to you is a part of this community is that they're sitting next to you, right? They've gone through the door. There's a boundary that they've crossed. And if you speak to them, you soon find you have certain commonalities with them. You have a shared history with them, you might recognize them, or they might talk about the same things you're interested in. They might have a badge or a means of identifying of one another. They might use the same language as each other. And we find that when we can intensify these specific things, people feel a much stronger sense of community as a result. And one of the easiest ways to increase the sense of community that people feel is to create a boundary that separates insiders from outsiders. Think of the typical approach that most people take when it comes to creating their community. They will create a group or a meetup group or any kind of place. And then they say, hey everyone, come and join my community. Yes, everyone, you over there, you over there, you over there, come join my community. But a community that's for everyone isn't for anyone. You can't have insiders without outsiders. And when you look at the strongest communities that exist today, what you find is that they have a boundary that they've crossed. There's something in their demographics, in their habits, or what they think or feel about different topics that separates the insiders from the outsiders. And one of the easiest ways to make people feel a stronger sense of community is to raise the boundary. Don't make it easier to join, make it slightly more difficult. Be more specific about who you want in that group. So you might have a community for people based in Hong Kong interested in blockchain, or people of a certain job title that are working in a specific field. But when you start combining these couple of things to have, a community for X for people who do Y, you tend to find the sense of community becomes a lot higher. People like to join the most exclusive groups that they feel they could belong to. And the more that your group personifies the interest of your members, the more that it's really specific about who you're targeting, the more those people tend to join. In London, we have these private members clubs that have been growing for years. And every new club tries to be more exclusive than the last club. And it began just as a club where you have to know a couple of people who will vouch for you to join. But now at the very far end, you have these really exclusive groups, these really exclusive clubs that go up to Lulu's here, which is you have to be a politician or a billionaire to join, which, by the way, is a really interesting mix of people to put together, right? Or, how many of you know what Mensa is? Awesome, yeah, it's the IQ Society. So basically, if you have a IQ that's in the top 2% of society, you're allowed to join this group. I have a friend that has recently accepted into this group, and he was disappointed by that, because he wanted to be in the 999 Society, which is for the top 0.1% of people on the planet, and has around 1,200 members. And you know what? I bet there are people in the 999 Society that wish they were in the Prometheus Society, which is for the top 0.03% of people, and has 120 members. And this goes all the way up to the Terror Society here, which is for the top 0.000000000, etc. 1%. It's a society that's so exclusive, it has no members. Even the founder can't get into this one. But the point is, people like to join the most exclusive, the groups that most personify who they are. Even Steve Jobs at Apple used to spend time working with the top 100 people in the company, a private group within the biggest company in the world. So if you want the top people in your field to join, then create a group only for the top people in your field. People like that sense of exclusivity a lot. And one of the easiest things you can do here is to change your registration form into an application form, because the mentality switches. People are accepted into the group. They don't just join the way they join any other group on the planet. They're accepted into that group. And that's what Blockstack, that's hard to say. Blockstack Slack. If you can say that a few times, I'll be impressed. Blockstack Slack. But even here, I don't think they're doing anywhere near a good job. A sentence or two on why you want to join? No, it should be, what can you contribute to this group? What experience can you offer this group? How much time can you commit to this group? When you turn your registration form into an application form, the mentality completely switches. We also want to be looking at rituals and traditions. We know that every strong group that has ever existed has some sort of rituals and traditions that people go through. When you join Square, for example, Jack Dorsey will take you out around San Francisco to look at different statues and explain his vision of the company. And that's a very powerful way to make people feel part of the group. Now, there's a lot of things we can't do in the online community, but if we look at what happens when most people join any of the groups that are around today, it's a lot like this, where you join and there's a message you get here saying, welcome. And that's it. In some groups, you can't even respond to that. That's not a good ritual. And rituals don't have to be that painful. There are tribes in the Amazon today where when you come of age, you have to wear these gloves of bullet ants. Do you guys know what a bullet ant is? Great story. There's a guy who's trying to find out what's the most painful insect sting in the world, and he went around the world getting stung by every insect and came up with a rating scale of this. The bullet ant came top. So imagine wearing a glove of bullet ants. Painful. But we're not talking about painful rituals. We're talking about something that's quite simple to do and something that applies to most kinds of communities. We want traditions and rituals that are really, really simple. One of the things that we've seen work best is asking people when they join any community, any group, what is the biggest career mistake you made? And what we find, the answers are hilarious. But more importantly, it gets people to open up. It gets people to be a little bit emotionally vulnerable to the group. It gets people to suddenly think, oh, you know what? I can be myself here. I can share funny stories. I can connect with other people just like me. What are you working on this week is also a simple tradition that gets people more engaged. It gives people something they can do. And by the way, if I know what you're working on and you know what I'm working on, we can find ways to collaborate and connect with one another. So what if instead of saying, welcome, we said, hey, how did you become interested in this? Or, hey, what's the one problem we can solve for you in this group? Or, hey, what is your biggest mistake? Sure, I can pose to it. All right. There's a Telegram thing as well if you want the sticker. Yeah, use their language as well. What happens with a lot of organizations is that when they launch a community, they use these really formal terms and traditions, and honestly, it just doesn't work well. When we have a client, one of the things we do is spend so much time interviewing 20 to 30 members of that audience. We do surveys of hundreds of thousands of members. We try and get as much data as we possibly can from that group. And what we find over and over again is that there's terms and phrases and things that they say that make no sense to an outsider. This morning, most of what you were talking about made no sense to me whatsoever. But we look out for these terms because we look out for the terms that have unique meaning to you. And then we use these terms throughout the community. Most communities, by the way, have a really bad name. The community should be named after a symbol that people recognize as being connected to each other. Every community will have some symbol. So find out what the language is that's unique to your audience, and then use that throughout the community. Use that often. So some action points here. 1, raise the barrier to entry. You don't have to make it too hard, just make it a little bit more difficult to join. 2, use rituals and traditions. These are your friends. You can test different things, you can find out what works, but make sure you have some rituals and traditions in place. And 3, use common symbols, words, expressions, things that have a unique meaning to your audience throughout that community, especially in the name that you give to that community. Okay, number 2, influence. Imagine that you're with a group of friends. Say there's 6 of you, you're at a cafe, bar, whatever you do for fun, and you want to find a place to eat, and then you suggest a place, say a dim sum place just down the street that you read about, and your friends are like, no, that's all right, and then they just move on. Now imagine a different group of friends where you recommend the same place, and they're like, yeah, that's a great idea, thanks for that. Wow, we've noticed you're always finding these great places to eat. Maybe in the future, you should be in charge of finding places to eat. Do you see the massive difference in influence here? The only people that participate in any kind of community are those that feel they can influence that community. And the very moment that any of your members no longer feel like they can influence a group is the moment they stop participating. Is the moment they'll never participate again. If someone joins and makes their first contribution to that group, and they don't get a good, quick response, they never participate again. They're gone forever. So the challenge is, how do we make people feel like they should or they could influence the group? And the fantastic thing about every online community is that there are so many opportunities to influence a group. There's countless opportunities or means to give people a sense of influence. One of the things when we interview, we don't just interview the people that do participate in a community when we're working with a client. We also spend a lot of time trying to interview the people that don't participate in a community. And can you guess the number one reason why they don't participate? Anybody, just shout out. Sorry? They don't influence? A little bit, but there's a more specific answer. You're close. Anyone else? Yes, they feel like they have nothing to share. By far, the number one reason why people don't participate is they're like, I don't really feel there's anything to share. And you might have that in groups that you belong to as well. I'm guessing almost everyone in this room has some group that they belong to that they don't participate in. And the reason is probably because you don't feel there's much to share. And it's often because, hey, I'm not an expert in this topic. You see all these experts sharing information with one another. You're like, I'm not really an expert, so I can't participate. But you know what? Experts need one thing in a community to be experts. They need questions to answer. They need problems to solve. And they need people that are going to share those problems with them. So the challenge with a lot of your members is to make them realize that a good question is as important as a good answer. So that's what we want to be doing, making sure that people realize that giving a good question, just sharing a simple piece of information, is as important as a good answer. What we do with a lot of the companies we work with is we start looking at who our members are. How much time do they have? How much motivation do they have? How many skills and experiences do they have? And then we think, with that time you have, with that skill you have, with that motivation you have, what is the best contribution you can make to the group? So you might not have the expertise to share a long-form article or to answer a challenge that no one else can solve, but you might know what the questions are. If I'm joining a blockchain group for the first time, I know what it's like to be a beginner in this field. I know what dumb questions I need to ask. There's going to be another 10 people behind me with the same questions. So everyone has something they can offer that group. And the challenge is to make people realize that. Make people realize they have something they can offer that group. And so one of the things we tend to do here a lot is that we look to find what unique experience do they have that we can use within the community. So for example, someone might join our community, like this person here. We might, let's just put the name into a search engine and see what comes up. Like, aha, LinkedIn. Well, let's look around this a little bit and find out what specifically we can see here that we can use. Like, when we look at her background, legal expertise. She has worked in the legal profession. Now, she might not be an expert. If there's a question about law that comes up in the community, law and blockchain, law and communities, whatever, we can say, hey, do you know any way of answering this question? Can you put us in touch with someone that can answer this question? Can you connect us with someone that has some experience here that they can share? And so even though she might not be able to answer that question directly, she can still influence that community. She can still make a unique, useful contribution to that community. And when she does that, we want to make a big deal out of it. We can mention people into discussions and say, hey, with your experience and expertise, you can answer this question. And when they do that, we can do an Ask Me Anything discussion. We can build their sense of expertise within that group. More and more, we can start to make them feel like they can do something special within that community. And then we can highlight the best contribution from our members as well. We can make sure that the people that are really going out there, the people that are making amazing contributions to our communities, we're highlighting and recognizing them in blog posts, Medium posts, discussions, chat channels, anything we have, any tool we have to give them more recognition, we can give that to them. And we want to also give people areas that they're responsible for. If people are an expert within a particular niche, then we want to find a specific place where they can do that. And there are unlimited opportunities for people to be experts within your community. Unlimited. Anyone can be an expert in almost any topic. So you can have as many topics as you like for people to be an expert in. So it doesn't matter what kind of community you are. And by the way, if you're just visiting the community, it's so refreshing to know who the experts are. It's so refreshing to be able to ask questions and know exactly who to ask that question to. That's a very powerful thing to have. And we also want to share our members' success stories as well. When someone makes a useful contribution to that group, we want to share it. Where someone has contributed a great, line of code, or they've had a big win, or they've launched their ICO, or whatever. We want to celebrate that as a community event. We want to make sure everyone else is aware of that, because that makes people feel a sense of togetherness. Makes them feel like they can influence that group. And another thing that we've found to be consistently really useful is to let people show off. If there's one thing that people love doing, it's showing off. But I think most of us also know that just bragging about how amazing we are is not a good idea. But what if we give people an excuse to do it? What if we create a discussion and say, hey, what is your biggest achievement in the last week, the last month, the last year? What have you succeeded in doing recently? Because these kinds of things let people show off what they've done, and then they start to congratulate one another. You start to build that bond of community together. And that's an amazing thing to do. And finally, give people a say in how things are run. People love feeling a sense of ownership over a community. And if you can give people a say in how things are run, people tend to get far more connected to their group. They tend to want to participate more because they feel a sense of ownership over that group. And that's an amazing thing to do. So, some action points here. 1, ensure that your members, especially people that are arriving for the first time, realize that having a good question is as important as having the right answers. 2, make sure that you're mentioning people to participate in discussions based upon their previous experience, based upon their previous expertise. And 3, highlight the best contributions to the group. Make sure people have unlimited opportunities to have influence there. Okay, number 3, how's everybody doing? Still with me? Is everyone's phone working okay? Yeah? So we see this at LinkedIn, where people will post their own content on LinkedIn because they think, if I get just one good business lead from this, if I get one sale from this, if I get one amazing connection from this, it's been worthwhile for me to do that. But if you're a part of that group, you're just getting spammed with more and more content all the time. And this is a problem because the goals of the individual and the goals of the community don't align. And what we want to be seeing instead is a situation where people are trying to do what's best for the group because it increases their own social identity. We've spoken about before how people want to belong to groups that are exclusive, but they also want to belong to groups that increase their sense of identity. Does anyone have a psychology background here? Awesome. So I'm about to butcher what's called social identity theory, which is the idea that people get a large part of their own identity from the groups that they belong to. And that's important because it means that people do want to belong to the most successful groups that they can join. But the challenge is, how do we make our groups seem as successful as they possibly can? And the one word that matters here is momentum. The more that people feel a sense of momentum, the more that they start to feel like, hey, this group is going somewhere, it's building up, it's going to become something, it's going to increase my identity, the more they want to associate themselves with that group. You see this with sports teams a lot. When a team is doing well, more people want to associate themselves with it. When a team isn't doing well, people start to drift away. So, one of the easiest things you can do here is have a very clear goal. And not just a big noble goal that's a couple of years away, but something more specific, like a goal you can achieve this month, this year. Something where people can say, hey, this is a clear, tangible goal that we can aim for right now and we can achieve if we work together. And if you have a goal, something that's clear and specific, set milestones in place. Because then people see what steps they can contribute towards to help you achieve that goal. Set out what the clear milestones are to achieve that particular goal. And then, look to see any evidence of progress towards that goal. Imagine there's 2 identical groups, and there's one group that is doing okay, and there's another group that's doing okay, but it's getting lots of media coverage as well. You're going to join the second group because it feels a stronger, much more powerful group. Look how many other people are writing about the group's success. So any external coverage you get in newsletters, in blogs, or mentioned by influencers, you want to mention that to your group because it tightens the group closer together. They feel a sense of collective identity and validation out of that happening. And then publish the roadmap. What is going to happen in the future of that community? What are the upcoming interviews that you've got going on? What content are you going to create? What are the activities that you're going to initiate? People want to know what's going to come up in that group. So you want to be publishing that within your group. And finally, celebrate small victories. You want to find any situation that sounds like a victory in a group. Something, especially when you're just getting going. You want to find really small victories that you've achieved. So that you can mention back to the group. Have a special day named after it. Something that's going to make people feel a sense of togetherness, that they've achieved something as a part of that group. And create useful assets as well. At the end of a community, there has to be something there, right? And one of the things that we've seen work really well is an ebook, where you might interview the top 100 members of that community or ask them to share their best piece of advice, then publish that as an ebook. Because one of the great things about that is all 100 of your top members then promote that ebook to everyone that they know. And it feels like the community did this together. So wikis work well, ebooks work well, anything that's a tangible thing that people can see that is educational, that helps the newcomers to that group, is a really useful thing to have. So action points. Sorry, I have a really bad cold today. So establish a clear goal that most members support. 2, highlight any progress you have towards that goal. And 3, make sure that you celebrate here all the small victories along the way. Because if you do this, people are going to sense this is a group that they want to belong to. Okay, finally, how's everyone doing? You still with me? Awesome, thank you. Is everyone's phone still working okay? I can see you checking it like, okay, I'm okay with that. It's a bit weird. Okay, the final part is a shared emotional connection. This is the hardest thing to get any group to feel, a sense that they're a part of something together. You guys might right now might be thinking, we're enduring this talk together. It's a shared emotional connection. And a shared emotional connection is the idea that the strongest groups feel happy and sad and angry about the same things at the same time. They're a place where you can share what you're worried about. You can share what your hopes and fears are. And you're like, this is a group that I belong to. It's a group that accepts me for who I am. And there are very specific steps that we can take here. 1 is to help your members to speak honestly and openly about certain things, particularly the issues that they care most about. There are so many places in the world where we can't quite share what we're most passionate about, where we can't quite share what we're scared about at any particular time. But you can do that within a community, especially an online community. So one of the things we try to do here is to build this up into different stages, because the level of trust you have to build to make this happen. 1 is to prompt members to do a couple of things. 1 is to share what they're doing. When people share what they're doing, you find a couple of things happen. The first one is if I share what I'm doing, you share what you're doing, we might find an opportunity to collaborate. Or we might find that we're working on different things, but there's a similarity with that. And that's very powerful to have. 2 is to share what they think or feel about any issue that's going on in your stage now. When people share how they feel about a topic, and that's reciprocated by someone else, they feel a stronger emotional attachment to that person. And when that occurs in a massive online community, where people are sharing how they feel, they're being very open about that, they feel a much stronger sense of attachment to the entire group. And that's an incredible thing to have. So hopes and fears are really powerful tools here. So we want people to be open, and we want to protect them when they are. We don't want people to laugh at them, to mock them, or do any of those things. And finally, we want people to talk about the most emotive topics we can. I had a friend that was working on an online community in the cancer space. And she started the community, and then she realized that people weren't really talking about the most emotive things, the things that they would get the most value from sharing in that group. So what she did, or what we advised her to do, was to really initiate the discussions herself. The discussions about end-of-life care, discussion about what happens, to your kids afterwards, all these kinds of discussions. And not every member wanted to talk about that, but it moved the goalpost of what is safe to talk about in that community. You see in this community here, this is a community for social care workers in the UK. And what you find is that the most popular discussion that ever took place in this community wasn't about exchanging information. It's about people that were angry about a decision that was made by a local council. Now, from the perspective of sharing information, there's no value here whatsoever. But a discussion like this bonds people together. When people all share the same emotion at the same time, at the same issues, they feel much stronger connected to each other. Also, when you talk about the most technical things, the things that you can't have a discussion about anywhere else, people feel a stronger sense of connection with one another. I have absolutely no idea what current detection with an Allegro ACS 756 on an 80 Mega 328 means, but I'm guessing, or I'm hoping, that if I was a design engineer, I would understand that. That would make sense to me. So you want to push your community to talk about the most technical things they can, things that only a super nerd in that field would talk about. Another thing is to host unique shared experiences. I moved to London back in 2010, I think. And there's a big crowd of people that built online communities in London at the time. And I wanted to get to know people, to make friends with them. So I was starting to look for an interesting thing that we could do together. And I was looking at the upcoming events in London during that time. And I found the best event I've ever heard of in my life, the Chessboxing World Championships. Have any of you heard of chessboxing before? What have you guys been doing with your lives? Seriously, chessboxing. Chessboxing is like the #5 hybrid sport in the world. It's where you have to beat your opponent in the boxing ring or on the chessboard. So they box for like 2 or 3 rounds, and then they play some chess. They box for some more rounds, and then they play some more chess. It is amazing. If it's ever in Hong Kong, I recommend that you go to it. You'd laugh, but... And so I invited a bunch of community professionals in London to this event, and you know what? It was nuts, quite frankly. But as a result, we feel we have a unique experience that we've shared together. And as a result of sharing that unique experience, it becomes part of the history of that group. We feel better connected to each other in that group. We have in-jokes about that. And you don't have to do this for your online community, unless it is chessboxing. But what are the unique experiences that your members can go through, online or offline? There's always something unique, some sort of something that's interesting and fun and exciting that you can put your members through. And when you do this, they feel a sense of shared history of one another. And by the way, it's also good to have an epic shared history of your community. Not just this community is about X and it was formed to do Y, but who were the first members to join that group? Who are the founding members of your community? What did they do? What are the biggest challenges that your community has overcome so far? And make sure that a newcomer to that group knows what they are. Because when a newcomer understands the history of the group, they start to feel better connected to that group, and they start to see where they can contribute to where the group is going. And finally, try and keep it fun. There's a lot of online communities out there that have to be very serious about the work that they're doing. But most of the time, it's okay to have a little bit of fun, keep it lighthearted, have games. Don't get overrun with silly, dumb games. But have some fun in that community. Because that's, what else is the point if we're connecting everyone together, if we're not going to have at least some fun within that group? So action points here. 1, push members to be open and honest with one another, especially their emotions. Really protect them when they do that. Don't let people attack any newcomer in that group at all. 2, create and support discussions where people can open up and talk more about themselves. And 3, make the community unique, fun, and interesting. And if you want to learn more about me and the work I do, you can buy one of my books. You can download .feedbig.com. You get half the book for free. And I've got a new book that's out next month. I don't know if I'm allowed to promote it, but please buy some for your friends, your family, Christmas gifts, you know. Thank you so much. It's amazing to speak to you.